The Pats answer the bell in their first big test of camp and flip the script from 2024. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I am your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England. Also host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, the defense gets punched in the face, but manages to punch back. Also, Coach Vrabel continues to leave his imprint early with this football team. But first, Drake Maye and the offense gave everyone reason for hope in their first joint practice of 2025. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast, a proud partner, the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Josh McDaniels and Drake Maye cooked against Washington in the first joint practice of 2025. We've talked about this joint practice since we got the camp schedule. This was one of those dates that you circle on the calendar saying it's a pretty big day. It is truly the first big test for this football team. And the offense, they passed that test. Greg Bedard writing on the offense. Offense looked very sharp, especially in the red zone, which should be music to everybody's ears, given some of the struggles from Maye and the offense in the low red zone area. Red zone today, mostly really, really good. And as we go through what the offense did today, I want to make sure that everybody understands that this is a joint practice. This is not a Super Bowl. We're not anointing the Patriots champions of any kind, but you do have to walk away feeling optimistic with the trajectory, especially for this offense. Let's start with Maye. He was good to very good during this practice against the Commanders. Mark Daniels of Mass Live posts, Maye starts practice going 10 of 12 against Washington starters. You have Evan Lazar posting, Maye was feeling it, looking off coverage, off platform throws, etc. Back to Bedard. Outside of the interception, which happened late in practice, we'll get to that, he was very sharp. Speaking of Maye, finding open receivers all over the field for team periods. I want you to absorb this. For team periods, Maye was 14 of 20, but that included drops from Travion Henderson, and Pop Douglas. So he should have really been 16 of 20 in team periods. Drake Maye had not one, not two, but three passing touchdowns. He had a scrambling touchdown. He did take one sack and again had that interception on his final drive. But what we are seeing from Maye on the balance of this camp is a comfortable Drake Maye, is a confident Drake Maye, is a Maye that has chemistry with his wide receivers and a quarterback that looks decisive. Now, as far as that late interception in practice, he had Pop Douglas wide open, tried to get it to Pop. Bobby Wagner got his hand on it at the second level, tipped it up, and it was picked. Similar to what happened in the scrimmage with Maye. So I know Bedard kind of threw out the idea of Maye changing his arm angle on those kinds of passes, but it was a tip pass by Bobby Wagner, and then that led to the interception. But overall, don't get it twisted. Drake Maye was good to very good in this joint practice. He wasn't the only one. The wide receivers showed up. Yeah, I didn't make a mistake when I just said that. I know it's hard to believe being a Patriots fan and watching that position for the past couple of years, but the wide receivers during this joint practice, they showed up, they made plays. And I would point out as well, Stephon Diggs was late to this practice, not sure why, but he was late to the practice. He did participate in 7-on-7s. We'll see if he's out there on Friday night in the preseason game. But a lot of the damage, pretty much all of the damage, was done by receivers not with the last name Diggs, which to me is a great note. It's pivotal that you're getting production in this kind of situation when Diggs is not out there consistently for this joint practice. And what we saw from the receivers today, according to all reports, was promise. Pop Douglas continues to be a stud. I know I said a moment ago that he dropped the pass, but really, I mean, he has been outstanding. He's been outstanding. It continued during this joint practice. Taylor Kyles of CLNS, he called Pop Douglas today unguardable. And you could say that about Pop throughout most of this camp. 7-on-7s, 11-on-11s, scrimmages, 1-on-1s, doesn't matter. Pop Douglas keeps getting open over and over and over again. And how about Kayshon Boutte? Kayshon Boutte has shown the consistency that we were all hoping that he would somehow find. He has shown that throughout this camp so far. I think that outside of Mac Hollins being the veteran and signing in the offseason and the history between Hollins and McDaniels, if you're just looking at this, receiver versus receiver, Kayshon Boutte right now is the third receiver on this team. Diggs, Douglas, then Boutte. That's how it would be if all things were equal. And he might be the third receiver on this team when all is said and done, when we are ready for week 1 against the Raiders. But Kayshon Boutte continues to show up, continues to make plays at practice in a variety of ways. Evan Lazar, Maye to Boutte on a back shoulder fade from the high red zone for 6. So a touchdown catch by Boutte. Another one, back shoulder. What's that tell you? Chemistry. Even more important about Boutte, here's what Drake Maye said post-practice. This was transcribed by Los Talk Pats on Twitter. Quote, "Coach keeps saying you do the right thing and you keep doing it over and over. I can trust you. It's comforting knowing that Boutte's going to be in the right spot and it's my job to give him a chance," unquote. Boutte is showing that consistency. He is showing some maturity for sure. And he has earned the trust of Drake Maye. Continues to have a good camp, but it didn't stop there. Javon Baker, who really has been defined by his inconsistencies. We've discussed that. Well, over the past week or so, he is showing that consistency. You can pretty much count on Baker to make at least one, if not multiple, good plays in a practice. And he showed up at the joint practice, caught a goal line slant, according to Evan Lazar, for a touchdown from Joshua Dobbs. And as Lazar put it, Baker's roster push continues, and it does. Right now, Javon Baker is your 6th receiver, I would say. If you are bringing 6 out of camp, Baker is the 6th guy. And then you had Mac Hollins, and he had an impact. Bedard wrote about Hollins, showed why the Patriots signed him as a big red zone target. He caught 4 of 5 passes from Maye and a touchdown. Mark Daniels wrote that Hollins just hauled in a really nice 25-yard touchdown from Dobbs. And beyond those guys, Efton Chisholm had 4 or 5 catches in this practice. Really the only receiver that you'd be looking for that didn't do much, according to what I read and heard, was Jalen Polk. Not much written about him, and he might be losing ground. He's definitely lost ground to Baker, and he might have lost ground during this joint practice to Efton Chisholm. How about the offensive line? Good news. Will Campbell, the trends continue. And the trend has been good in team, good with run blocking, some wins and losses with the one-on-ones. And that's what we saw during the joint practice. Chris Mason from Mass Live. Campbell held up well in pass pro during the first 11-on-11 period. Looked just fine. Bedard on Campbell. Campbell mostly held his own. Played very well in the 11-on-11s, including a big block on Dietrich Wise to spring a big Travion Henderson run. He didn't give up a pressure in team periods that I could see. Not one pressure. One-on-ones were a mixed bag in 3 reps against Wise. So mostly what Campbell's done throughout this camp. He has looked good when it comes to 11-on-11s, those team drills. He's doing well. One-on-ones, he loses here and there. Run blocking, doing a good job. Nothing alarming so far. No matter what anybody's saying out there, don't listen to the noise. There's been nothing alarming about Will Campbell and his camp to this point. Wise was asked about Campbell, again, transcribed by Los Pats Talk. Quote, "He's really good at using his hands, very strong guy, has a very high ceiling. I faced tackles who have short arms before. It's all about the heart." And if you're wondering about Jared Wilson, he also had a good day. Bedard wrote, "Wilson looked really good against a good Commanders defensive tackle group in one-on-ones. Wilson beat Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Ferrell. He had a draw against Deron Payne. So if you're looking at that young left side of the offensive line, Campbell solid, Wilson maybe even more than solid. And it just didn't stop there because the rest of the offensive line, breaking news, was not a dumpster fire. Nothing crazy happened. Morgan Moses, by the way, was out. Vrabel said he's dealing with something. But the offensive line, if you were wondering, they held it together during their first big test at this joint practice, much like the wide receivers and Drake Maye. They passed. They passed that test. The defense starts slow, but we'll tell you why you should be excited about how things ended. That's next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball, under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned down at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups. Easy to use, fast to pay out, makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. If you're not involved with FanDuel, what are you waiting for? Placing a same-game parlay, watching a bet ride into the ninth inning? FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. We'll do the same for you. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5, just $5, and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. It's easy. Or if you don't want to do that, visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Again, it's just $5. You get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com/LockedOn or the FanDuel app today to get started. Not everything is going to be perfect. We understand that. But it truly is all about how guys and the team respond. How do they respond to adversity? If you get off to a slow start, do you respond and pick things up? Or do you just kind of wilter and let the ball keep rolling down that hill? I bring that up because I want to talk about the defense at the joint practice against the Commanders. Andrew Callahan posted, Jayden Daniels carved up the Patriots defense to start, but finished 5 of 7 with 2 sacks in the opening team period. So Daniels started hot, then faded a little bit towards the end. And as this practice went on, the defense played better. The defense improved, which is exactly what you're looking for. Mike Tyson, right? Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth, whatever that saying was. You know it. You know it at this point. It's been mentioned so many times when we talk sports. The Patriots kind of got punched in the mouth defensively to start the practice, but they responded. And they said, okay, well, maybe the beginning plan wasn't exactly what we're looking for, but let's adjust. Let's do something here. Let's compete at a little bit of a higher level, and let's make sure that we get the best out of this practice. And that's really precisely what happened. Now, I will also be fair to Washington, and I'll also add the Patriots, obviously. They didn't have Christian Gonzalez. They didn't have Carlton Davis. They didn't have Kayvon Thibodeaux. So they were missing some important players, but Washington was also missing important players. Cosme and Coleman on the offensive line, but most importantly, Terry McLaurin was not out there. He did not travel with the team as he continues to have that contractual battle with the Commanders front office. But, you know, the defense continues to trend in the right direction, no matter really who's out there. And it starts with the pass rush. The pass rush all camp long has been effective. And during this joint practice, Milton Williams, Christian Barmore, they showed themselves out there and did some effective things. Back to Andrew Callahan. Barmore and Williams, each with monstrous wins in one-on-one pass rush versus the Commanders' offensive line. Mike Giardi wrote this about Barmore. I'm not ready to declare that he's back, but there are flashes of that snap-your-fingers get-off. Barmore had a handful of disruptive reps. And it's not just the interior defensive line we're talking about, getting this pressure and making some plays. Harold Landry has had a good camp. And Evan Lazar wrote that Landry continued to have a good camp during this joint practice against Washington. Landry's been active today, Lazar wrote. Seen him in Jayden Daniels' face a few times. Giardi, meanwhile, pumping Elijah Ponder's tires, somebody we've talked about recently. Ponder showed up with another couple of pressures off the edge, and maybe one of those pressures would have been a sack if contact was allowed on the quarterbacks. So Landry, Ponder, no chase on today, but you're still getting some pressure from the edge, which is a good sign as the interior defensive line starts to pick things up a little bit. Now, I didn't see much on Keion White. I'm not sure if it was just a quiet day, if he just really didn't do anything. I didn't see Keion White mentioned anywhere. So we keep an eye on that with White's, somewhat of a roller coaster 2024. But White not mentioned much. It was mostly Landry. It was Ponder, Williams and Barmore making some plays. That was on the defensive line. Let's talk about this secondary. Again, no Carlton Davis. He was out there, had pads on from what I read, but he did not get involved in the practice. And Gonzalez is still out with that hamstring injury. But, the backup cornerbacks, especially the ones kind of towards the top of the depth chart right now, they played fairly well. The guy that really stood out was Alex Austin. And I've long been a fan of Alex Austin. We've seen flashes. We saw flashes at the end of 23. We saw flashes at the end of 24 when he came back from injury. And Andrew Callahan wrote about Austin. He made a big fourth down pass breakup in the end zone to force a turnover on downs against Daniels and the Commanders' starting offense in a team drill that started from the 25-yard line with 45 seconds left. So end of game situation, that's the scenario. Alex Austin makes the play in the end zone and forces the turnover on downs. And Callahan wrote that the coverage was excellent during that entire series from the 25-yard line with 45 seconds left. If you think that sounds good regarding Alex Austin, Giardi was even higher on Austin. He wrote, Austin looks like he could be a starter in this league. Important considering the injury history of Davis in particular. And yes, it is. We have mentioned that multiple times. Davis misses pretty much a month every single season, and you need that third corner to be reliable if you are banking on Davis to be your number two guy opposite of Gonzalez. So Alex Austin, good camp, continues, made a big play at the very end of this practice. And if you just look at the top four, let's say hypothetically that Gonzalez and Davis are ready by week one, I feel really good about these defensive backs, the cornerbacks specifically. I feel really good about them. Gonzalez, Davis, Austin, Marcus Jones, DJ James has had a very good camp. I feel good about those cornerbacks, but not everything was great. I don't want to sit here and tell you that every single solitary thing during this joint practice was awesome, because it wasn't. Patriots defense, not necessarily great against the run. Again, to Giardi, who was covering the Pats defense during this joint practice, New England struggled setting an edge on runs designed to hit outside the offensive tackles. And this is where we bring up Anthony Jennings. One of the questions I've had and continue to have, can you rely on the defensive ends that you have currently on this roster, aside from Jennings? Can you rely on those guys when you get into the season to defend the run consistently? Now, Chasson's done fairly well in camp. Again, he wasn't there today. Landry last year, good against the run. But do you keep Jennings just in case? You might have to. You might have to. And it's not always on the defensive ends. Let's not forget, it's also on the defensive backs, allowing guys to get to the outside and hit that perimeter. You got to make sure as a defensive back that you're guarding against the boundary and you push the runner inside to more bodies, more traffic. So some of this is also on the defensive backs. Another part of the practice defensively that did not go great, defense against Zach Ertz. How many times have we talked about that over the past few years? Just the lack of an ability to cover tight ends by this Pats defense. And it showed up again during the practice. And it was mostly on the linebackers and Kyle Duggar. And Spillane and Ellis, they got to make sure that they're better in coverage. And Duggar, we know the issues with him trying to defend pass catchers at times. So a little shaky there. So not everything was perfect. Not everything was clean. Speaking of clean, Mike Vrabel's face wasn't clean by the end of this joint practice. Vrabel gets involved in a fight and some other takeaways from the first big test of camp. That's all coming up as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. This episode is presented by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. Whether you've never played on Yahoo Fantasy or not, it doesn't matter. Get involved right now. Yahoo Fantasy has been around for 28 years, and fantasy football greatness is what they're about. And Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. To kick it off, they just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team gets eliminated each week until there's one team left standing. With the season around the corner, now's the time to get your league together and give this new mode a try. If you're more into the classics, you can still play in head-to-head private leagues or join a public league. Stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. We talk about the details all the time, and the details are important. And we gave you a lot of details about this joint practice in the first two segments of this episode, but I also think the 30,000-foot view is important. Let's not forget, Mike Vrabel is trying to build a program. And building a program is all about consistency. It's not about one joint practice. That's why you don't throw a parade because you had a good joint practice against the Commanders. This is about sustaining success and building the program correctly. The culture fits, and Vrabel making sure he's setting the tone of the locker room and guys believing in this coaching staff and mostly believing in Mike Vrabel to begin with. As far as week one in this season against the Raiders, you've got to have that belief. And during the joint practice, it's pretty obvious. Vrabel and the team, the players, they have each other's backs. There was a kerfuffle during this joint practice where Travion Henderson was blocking Von Miller. Miller was blitzing, and Henderson picked up the blitz. Great job by Hendo, if I can call you Hendo. Is that okay? Great job picking up the blitz by Miller. They go to the ground. There's a little bit of a tussle back and forth. Will Campbell jumps in. Love it. And Vrabel ends up jumping in. And when all was said and done, he's at the bottom of the pile, gets up, bleeding from the cheek. And, I do think that this, while it's entertaining and the bloody cheek is going to be, I wouldn't compare it to Kurt Schilling's bloody sock, but it is going to be talked about an awful lot over the next couple of days. And I don't mind it. I'm kind of in on that. But there's a bigger message here. And Karen Guregian of Mass Live wrote about it on the Patriots' identity being created through their head coach. And here's what Guregian wrote. The Patriots have been pushovers the past two seasons. Yes, they were deprived of talent, but sometimes hard work, commitment to the goal, an extra level of toughness and resilience, and having the group work as one can make up for a team that's lacking in the star department. What happened in the fight spoke volumes about Vrabel and his team. It spoke volumes about where they're at and where they might be headed. It stamped that identity. Then I saw two quotes from two veterans on this team. And that's when I really bought in to what Karen was writing about. Hunter Henry said, quote, "He's right there with us, man. I think the player comes out in him a little bit too. You got to love a coach who loves to compete and has those competitive juices just like us," unquote. Feeling the connection with the head coach. The competitive juices. You got to love a coach who loves to compete. And then Christian Barmore said, quote, "He's one of us. He's got our back. We've got his back. That's a coach we love." There's the word again. I love, there it is again, his energy. He's a real great coach. We're talking about belief. We're talking about confidence. We're talking about credibility and also toughness and understanding understanding that your coach is there for you. And he's competitive. He's feisty. Now, he's more trying to break things up. He's not getting into this to fight anybody. But the fact that he gets his hands on people, he gets involved, it makes the players feel like he is fully invested. He's all in. And you can tell that by what Henry and Barmore said. That belief, that confidence, that credibility, that toughness, it's all there. It is all there. So if the Patriots end up having a good season, I can guarantee you this story is going to come back time and time and time again, and it's going to be used to show how Vrabel galvanized his roster. Something else about Vrabel. He's got the fans excited. I mean, I'm excited, but he's got the fans excited. The buzz is back. The fans are buying in. I saw Mike Giardi post before the joint practice. He must have been stuck on Route 1. He said he posted, Route 1's a joke. And when I was living in Foxborough, I could tell you last year, you could easily get to a regular season game. You could jump on Route 1 at about 11:15, and you could pretty much head right up Route 1 with no problems. Great. Straight up Route 1 to the parking lot to tailgate for a few hours. It was easy to get to a game last season. So the fact that Route 1 was a joke before a joint practice tells you how excited this fan base is. And Giardi confirmed that later, said the buzz was back in Foxborough. And you could feel it. And it's truly a borderline insane. A 360, a 180, how's that work? If you go 360, you go where you started from, so I guess it's a 180. There you go, Nick. A 180 from the end of 2024, when you went through the, Jelani Tavai garbage, fans had pretty much quit on the team, and they should have, frankly, with the way that season went and how it ended, with some of the things that the guy said. There was a sour taste in the mouths of Patriots fans. And already, we're not even in the middle of August yet, but already Mike Vrabel has turned this thing around. The offseason, the draft, Drake Maye's progression, Josh McDaniels coming back. It's really lit a fire under this fan base. And I could see people were 5 deep standing over there at the Gillette practice fields. So the buzz is back. And if this team competes, if this team plays hard, if this team, is in the conversation, as we always say, late November, early December, Gillette might just end up being a pretty tough place to play. And it's great to see the fans have that excitement again. Now, hopefully the team can follow through. All right, some other notes. Stephon Diggs, again, he was late to practice, but he did get out there. There was some concern, some tweets about he's not here. It's the first time he hasn't been here since the beginning of camp. He got out there. Don't know why he was delayed, but he got out there. He got involved, 7-on-7s. I mean, maybe the dude just had a poop. Never know. Happens. Happens to the best of us. Meanwhile, who was out there from the beginning and who was great and has been really under the radar this camp? Kyrie's Tonga. No one's talking about Tonga because we're all excited about Barmore and other defenders, but Tonga's been really good. And Andrew Callahan posted the star of the one-on-ones during this joint practice was Tonga, a late-round journeyman who's been outstanding all camp and all drills. Tonga went 2-0 during his one-on-one opportunities. And it's a significant spot for this team. I mean, he's the third defensive tackle. He's right there behind Williams and Barmore. And he's got a little bit more beef to him, which should help against the run. Not a perfect joint practice, but this team competed. I think this team, will create some, I don't want to go too far. Let's just say it was somewhat inspiring, the first big test that they faced. And they passed that test. We'll see what happens on Friday night. But you walk away feeling optimistic about this football team, and that's really all you can ask for at this point. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. And hey, check us out. Hit that like button. Subscribe. get the notification bell done, all that good stuff. Thank you for being an everydayer, making Locked On Patriots your first listen. Make your second listen, Locked On Bets. Lee Sterling, Kevin Rogers do a great job. You can find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.